The pulp magazines, the birthpools of modern science fiction. People reference them constantly when talking about how the science fiction became one of the most popular genres ever. Even on my teeny channel with just a few videos I mentioned them a couple of times already. But what was the sci-fi like back then, at the early times of pulp magazines really? I decided to check it out, so I read one of those magazines. One from even the pre-golden age of sci-fi era, and it was totally not what I was expecting. Hi, I'm Nick Hein, and on this channel I'm overloading my brain, trying to talk with a bad accent and even worse grammar about the writing, the books, the reading and everything connected. Of course, most of the hardcore, old-school sci-fi fans know about the founding fathers, the great ones of the golden age of sci-fi, such as Robert Heinlein, Ray Bradbury and others. But there were a lot of others. What about them? What about those whose names we'd barely ever heard? Was the writing reading worthy by the standards of the modern sci-fi fan? Well, let's find out. For my experiment, I'd chosen one of the most famous pulp fiction magazines, Amazing Stories, October issue from 1929, actually a few years before the golden age of sci-fi even officially started. I know that this magazine was founded and published by the great Hugo Gernsback, the very person after whom the Hugo Award was named. Even the term science fiction was invented by Gernsback, though initially it sounded a bit different as scientifiction. I did some background research on the matter, and here are a couple of fun facts. First, by the time this issue of Amazing Stories was published, Gernsback already lost control of the magazine due to the aggressive financial overtake by his competitors. But that fact didn't actually influence the magazine itself, as it was successfully published for many years afterwards. Second is even more interesting. Even though Amazing Stories consider it as one of the pioneers of the mass pulp fiction sci-fi magazines, it wasn't actually pulp, because it was printed on pretty decent good paper. Anyway, back to the magazine and my impressions. I was not able to get hold of a physical copy of it, as it turns out to be a quite complicated and pretty expensive option. But I have a full scan of it, of all its pages, so without further ado, let's jump into it. The first thing, great, awesome illustrations. I was always nostalgic about the works of the old school artists, and currently with all the AI slop and whatnot, this feeling is times amplified. The cover by H.W. Wesso is good and related to the inside stories, by the way, but just look at the illustrations inside. Man, it's so good, it's great. I really miss that art. Honestly, we need more of that. I don't know how it's gonna be possible in the modern publishing thing, but it's just what we need more. The names of the authors tell me absolutely nothing. I never heard about any of them, and that actually was the main point of my experiment. What was I expecting? I don't know. I think maybe vaguely I was expecting some stories about the bug-eyed monster alien invaders kidnapping all the beautiful women, something along those lines, as that was my idea about the mediocre pulp sci-fi. But to my surprise, it was nothing like that. Actually, there were no aliens in the stories whatsoever. Well, they were kinda in the first story, Death from the Skies by Hyatt Verrill, but only by proxy, so to speak, as everything in it evolved around the bombardment of the Earth by the projectiles from Mars, emitting some sort of death waves to destroy humanity for reasons that remain totally unknown to the reader. Honestly, this one felt like some sort of bit modernized fan fiction based on the War of Worlds by Herbert Wells, even judging by the language itself, though of course I'm in no position to judge properly, as English is not my first language. By the way, another fun fact: check the page numbers. I was a bit confused by them, but after short research found out that the page numeration going all the way through all the year's issues of the magazine, starting from January and so on. I've never seen anything like that before in any magazines. Pretty interesting concept, by the way. The next is a very short story titled One Leg Too Many by the author, who goes by the name of W. Alexander. I have no idea what the W stands for and if it's a real name or a pen name. Funny flash fiction about the biotechnologies and the legal aspects of them coming into our life. Nothing special, but it was a really fun read. The third piece in the magazine is the first part of the typical faraway adventure story, depicting yet another lost kingdom in the depth of the Amazonia. Nothing special really, but decent, and I will probably check the next issue of the magazine to see how it will end. Now, the fourth story, The Chamber of Life by Peyton Wertenbaker, hopefully I'm not butchering his name, is the really interesting piece. There's not much of a plot in it, honestly, by the modern standards, but the ideas are so interesting and so ahead of the time. It starts in a very typical way for such stories back then, as far as I can understand. The main protagonist meets some weird scientist/inventor and right away agrees to take part in the experiments, testing the great invention. The thing is, this invention, the Chamber of Life, is as close and as accurate a depiction of virtual reality as you would never expect to see in the 1929. Let me just read a few lines from the story. I have created a means of reproducing all the sensations that a man would have in actual living. All the sounds, the odors, the little feelings that are half realized in daily life. Everything. The chamber takes possession of you and lives for you. You forget your name, your very existence in this world, and you are taken bodily into a fictitious land. The chamber has possession of your mind. It tells you that you are doing such and such a thing, and gives you all the feeling of doing that thing, and you actually believe you are doing it. Like, man, that's exactly what the Matrix is supposed to be, isn't it? But check this out. There were even the critical pills involved, though they were needed to enter the 1929 Matrix version, aka the Chamber of Life. The reality within the Matrix is also kinda interesting. According to the story, it was all dreamed up by the scientist/inventor. The main character finds himself in the distant future, which to me at first glance looked very much like the autocratic post-scarcity utopia, something like the Culture series by Yen M. Banks. All the material basics are provided by the machines, although author didn't go as far as to create the AI. I think it was too early for this concept in 1929. And the human population is all about the creative professions. But then it all quickly goes upside down when the protagonists discover that there is literally no freedom whatsoever in this society, as life of every person is totally pre-planned even before their birth. Even though this story has literally no logical resolution, it just suddenly ends. I start to suspect that this is a common flaw for all the pulp sci-fi. I really was surprised by its concepts. It was so unexpected. I deem this story as the absolute best of the issue. As the last one, The Steam God by Walter Catley, is nothing special. Yet another story about the Lost Kingdom. Only this time it's an Arctic oasis surviving by the volcanic activity, using the geothermal steam energy, and inhabited by the giants, with no reasons for them to be giants included whatsoever. The protagonist stumbles upon them, get imprisoned, and then escape the imprisonment by the means of superior scientific and technological knowledge, and making a social revolution in the stagnant theocratic society along the way. Honestly, it sounds more exciting than it really is. The only interesting thing about this story is that just 3 years earlier, in 1926, in the USSR, a novel called Sannikov's Land was published, in which the same idea of the Arctic volcanic oasis is used, although the plot, the characters and details are totally different. It was actually translated and published in English, but many years after that, and I really doubt that author of the Steam God had heard something about this novel. Probably it's just a coincidence. So, my final thoughts about early pulp sci-fi. Well, first of all, as I said before, it was definitely not what I was expecting. Was it more relaxed, maybe? In some stories, like Death from the Skies, for example, I got rather some 19th century literature vibes. The plots are mostly so-so, or plainly bad. The same goes for the characters, but some of the ideas are outstandingly ahead of their time. The art is just awesome. The ads, there is a lot of ads. I mean, a lot of ads, but mostly they are concentrated in the first and the last pages of the magazine. So they are not nearly as much annoying as the advertising Armageddon in the modern internet. So what do you think about this review? I will definitely check on a few more issues of various sci-fi pulp magazines. Would you be interested in seeing more such content on the channel? Please write into the comments. This was Nick Hein. See you soon.